Good evening. My name is Paul Cardillo. Most of you look familiar, not all of you by any means. I'm going to tell you a quick background story about myself, because I think in my experience of going to seminars over the last 20 years, it helps to understand who's speaking, where that is coming from, what that person's life experiences are. So that you can put that in perspective along with what is being said. Just a real brief background on myself. I am currently an attorney in Tampa. I've been practicing law for a little over 30 years. That's what I do for my day job. I represent people in various kind of really difficult situations. I do a lot of criminal defense work. I do a lot of disability work. I've done kind of a general practice over the years. I have seen people in the very worst of their life circumstances, which has given me an insight onto what it is that most of us experience. When I've gone to visit people in jails, or when I've had to file emergency orders to get custody of little children that are being abused, things of that nature. And you see that over and over and over again. And you start to wonder, what is this all about? And then 20 years or so ago, I went through my own experiences, my own life experiences that led me to the Course in Miracles, which is probably most of you are familiar with it. This blue book right here. I call it the roadmap for your life. And until you get to a point in your life where nothing else works, where everything has fallen apart, where you're, in a sense, backed into a corner and you've tried lots of other spiritual paths, eventually you will come to the Course in Miracles. My background is that I was born and raised Catholic. I went to Catholic schools when I was a kid. I went to Catholic high school. My uncle is a Monsignor in New York. I have an aunt that's a Mary Noel nun. I am one of 8 children. My parents' names are Peter and Mary. Our grandparents are Joseph and Mary's. My older brother's name is Peter. I have a younger brother named Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and David, and a sister named Mary. So I come from an Irish Catholic background, so I'm well versed in Catholicism, which is really helpful for me to understand the Course in Miracles. And the Course in Miracles is the book that undoes everything that I knew. It's the book that undid all the learning that I did over the years. And it was a real gift, truthfully, to have been raised Catholic, because I wouldn't know what the lies are if I wasn't educated in it. Yeah. I always felt very, very close to Yeshua, Jesus. And the things that I were taught, even as a kid, never made a whole lot of sense to me. It wasn't something that I outright rejected. I mean, even I was an altar boy on top of that. But I would listen to the priest talk, and I would listen to sermons and so forth. And there was a real, I didn't like the answer to my questions that it's just a mystery, and accept that. And I know all of us in one way or another have been given that answer. It wasn't good enough for me. And it kind of led me to when I wanted answers from the Catholic Church, I actually sat down with a priest, and he couldn't give me any. It was just, his answer was just trust Jesus, which is a good answer, but it didn't explain anything. So I set off 20 years ago on looking for peace. After my first marriage broke up, it was a real fun situation. You know, one of those had all the ugliness that you can imagine. And suddenly life didn't make sense to me anymore. I had two daughters at the time that I had to go through the whole legal process of getting custody and all that kind of fun stuff. But it changed my perception of life. Because I thought my path was set out. I thought that my path was, I was doing, you know, I went to college, went to law school, started working as an attorney, got married, had children, and that's the way it was going to go, and live happily ever after. And that didn't happen. And for some reason, it really twisted me. For some reason, it really made me go, what the? Literally, I could not fathom what was happening. Fortunately, I was, a long story short, I ended up making friends with, I called into a radio station. And I had a question about just business sort of things. And I talked to this on a radio station. I talked to a psychic named Gary Spivey. A lot of you may know who he is. And Gary, he answered my question, whatever it was, I don't remember. But he called me, he said, call me off the air because I need to talk to you. And I did, and Gary and I became fast friends for a number of years. And he opened the door for me to see beyond what appears to be reality. He literally helped me open my vision to see past what we normally see. That helped open me up to accept something other than traditional religion, other than the traditional stories that we're told. And along the way, in the year 2000, I went to Fort Lauderdale to see Wayne Dyer. At the time I was reading Wayne Dyer, and I loved Wayne Dyer. And I was just really excited to see him. And at that point, I had just gotten remarried. So my wife and I went, and we saw him the next evening or the next day. We had an open spot in the schedule. It was a Hay House convention where you get to pick who you're going to see. And I think I saw Doreen Virtue, and Deepak Chopra may have been there. In any case, James von Prague was also doing a seminar, and I didn't know who he was. We had time, we went in and sat down in James's seminar. And one of the things that he did after he talked for so long, one of the things he did was he wanted to do an exercise with kind of dropping your judgment, dropping your physical sight, and having no expectations and see what would happen. So what he did is he turned on the lights. He asked us to turn to someone that we didn't know and just look, just gaze. At that point, I think I had started meditating. And I had started reading the Course in Miracles. I didn't really understand it a whole lot. This was really all woo-woo to me. It was complete woo-woo. I mean, I'm coming from a very strict Catholic background, and this stuff is just like, okay, I'll give it a shot. What do I have to lose? So lights went down. I turned to my partner behind me, and he was a large white man with blonde hair from New Jersey. We traded just a bit of information. And then lights went down a little further, and I just looked. And that's what everybody in the room did. And after just a couple of minutes, the large white man with blonde hair from New Jersey was no longer sitting there. He was gone. He was from me to you. And in his place was a man with a hood, long dark hair, and a beard, sitting there smiling at me. And I should have been surprised, because when I look back on it, I don't know why I wasn't just shocked and didn't run out of the room. I should have, but he just smiled at me. And it was as if I knew him, but I didn't know him. I didn't know what it is or who it was that I was seeing. That lasted less than 60 seconds. It's very quick. very short, but it was sustained. And in those few moments, something changed. The lights came back up, and we got to share our stories about what we saw, about what happened. And my wife was sitting next to me, and she did the same exercise with her partner. She saw German Shepherd dogs around this man. And it made sense to her partner because the man had recently lost two of his, they had died, two of his German Shepherds had died. He loved them very much, and they were apparently still around him. I told my story to my partner. He said it didn't make any sense to him. He didn't know the person. So I said, okay, well, that was just woo-woo, and that was fun, and I don't know what that meant. And I'm not going to ever talk about it. I said to myself, I'm not going to ever talk about it. Michelle, I don't know what happened, but I'm not going to talk about it. So we went out 10 minutes later. The seminar was over. We went out into the hallway where there are artists and writers and so forth selling stuff. And as I was walking down the hallway to my left, I saw a painting hanging on the wall. I turned and looked, and I barely saw it, and it stopped me in my tracks. I froze when I looked at it because the painting was the man I had just seen 10 minutes ago. It was the man. So I stood there and looked at it, and I couldn't move. And the man who owned the booth, Joe Crane is his name, who's a writer. Joe came over and asked me what I knew. He said, "Why are you staring at the painting?" And I just said, I didn't say anything. He says, and he asked me, "What do you know about that painting?" And I said, "Nothing." I did not want to talk about it. And he said, "No, you know something about it. Tell me." And so I told him the experience that I just told you. And he was really excited. He said, "I knew it. Now this all makes sense." So, and he told me the story that the painting had been sent down from Chicago, from Joanne Mako, who's an angel artist in Chicago. And she had told him to send it to the seminar in Fort Lauderdale. She said, "I don't know why, it's just supposed to go. So I have no idea why I'm giving it to you, Joe, but I know it's supposed to go." So it shows up in Fort Lauderdale, and I have this experience, and Joe said, "You know, you look like that painting." And I really didn't get the connection, and I said, maybe. He said, "Can we take pictures of you with the painting?" And he and his wife, Joe's wife, came over, and he took pictures, sent them to Chicago, to Joanne. Long story short is Joanne invited me to speak in Chicago about a year later about what occurred. Which I was again on the fence about it, completely on the fence. I didn't want to go and talk about it. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what to do with it. I knew that the painting now which is this painting. This is the painting, a larger version. The original is right behind the front desk. This is a larger version of it. This is the Jesus that I saw, the exact image. There's nothing that's different about it. It's 100% the Jesus that I saw. And so at this point, before I went to talk, I made copies of it. It hangs in my house, in my office, and so forth, in my bathroom. My wife's like, "Okay, no, you can't hang in the living room." I wanted to hang it everywhere. And my clients would come in and say, "You look like, do you know, is that you?" They would keep saying, "Is that you? Is that you? Is that you?" And I would say no, and they wouldn't believe that was me. My children that were younger at the time, they would always say, "Daddy, that's you, that's you." We know that's you, Daddy. And I got a kick out of it. But I really didn't know where it was leading me. And when I was on the fence about going to Chicago to talk, I met with a man named Tom Turner. Tom used to live in St. Pete, and Tom was a very gifted, I don't even like to call him a psych, but he's just very spiritually gifted. And Tom said to me, without me saying, he said, "You're on the fence about going on a trip, and your angels are telling you that you need to go." And so we talked. I said, "Yeah, I am." He said, "They're absolutely telling you it's important. This is your path." Okay, so I went, and I spoke about what I just spoke about here. And as I was leaving, It was a weekend in the fall, because I remember there were pumpkins all over the place and it was cold. And as I was leaving, I was going out to the parking lot by myself. And when I got to the parking lot, a woman came running out after me. I was out there in the parking lot by myself, and she said, "Do you understand what it is that you're supposed to do? Do you understand what's happening?" And I said, "No, I don't. I'm just here talking about this." She and I became very good friends. She was very spiritually gifted. She owns a store, her sister owned a store very much like this in Michigan. And I got to speak there a few times. And one thing led to another. One of the things that Tom Turner told me when I was on the fence about going, and I'm telling you all this for a reason, because it applies to all of us. One of the things that Tom said was that when you go, this is going to lead you to lots of places. There are going to be lots of connections made. There's going to be a web of light that spreads out across way further than you can imagine. And that has become the case. I've gotten to go to California and speak various other places in Mexico, Michigan, and so forth. And everywhere I've gone, I've run into a spiritual lesson. It's too many to even talk about. But what is coming to me to tell you about is I was sitting on a beach in Mexico, and it was a rainy day. Nobody was on the beach, and it was a spirit. I went with the people I'd met at the seminar, and I was sitting on the beach, rainy day, by myself under a thatched hut. The ocean was really stirring up, and there's this man, a native Mexican, came walking down the beach. And he walked past me. He was a good 50 yards away. He was down by the shore, and he just looked up at me and kept walking. And for some reason, there was a connection. And a voice said to me, if he comes back, talk to him. And so I just kind of didn't pay attention to it, but 20 minutes later, he walked back. And he took a beeline straight to me. The two of us were on the beach. There was not another soul in sight. And he walked straight up to me, and he was selling puppets. He had like puppets on strings. And he asked me in kind of broken English, would I like to buy one? And I said, okay, well, I'm supposed to talk to him. So yeah, I said, yeah, I'll buy one. I bought two. And he was about to leave, and he looked at me and he said, he put his hand on my heart. He just reached out and put his hand on my heart. And he said, are you happy? In very broken English, and he smiled, smiling through broken teeth, and just a very poor man. Are you happy? And he just smiled at me. And it was the same sort of smile that Yeshua smiled. And I said, yes. I said, yes, I am, I have, and I started naming the things that are in my life. I have great children, a great wife, yada, yada, yada. And he looks at me and he says, no. He says, are you happy in here? And he just smiled and left. And so I sat down, and that made a huge impact on me. Huge impact on me. Here I was in Mexico on a beach that, somehow I got led to, and all of the stars aligned, synchronicities aligned, divine order aligned, so that this man would walk up to me and open my eyes a bit more. And that just led me to being more and more determined to wake up from the dream. It was clear that he was awake. It was clear that he saw something in me that needed to be fixed. He saw something in me that needed to awaken. When I got back to the United States, that just stuck with me. And I dug deeper and deeper and deeper into the Course in Miracles. And I stayed focused on it. because it, like most of us in here, it will speak to you. It will answer every single question that you have about every single thing that's going on in every single moment of what appears to be your life. If we trust, and the Course in Miracles is all about trusting what Yeshua is saying, what Jesus is saying in the Course in Miracles. He's absolutely given us a roadmap. He's been here, done that, knows what to do, knows what to say, absolutely can tell us what to do in every single moment of our lives. And this painting, I probably 6 or 8 years ago, a woman called me and asked me to do her divorce. And I didn't want to do it. It sounded like an ugly divorce. It had all kinds of, just like yuckiness going on. And I just really wasn't up to doing it. But she wouldn't leave me alone. She called me back the next day and said, please take it. And I just said no. And then by the third time I said, okay, I'll think about it. And the fourth time she wore me down. I said, okay. And it was a little bit intriguing. Her husband was either a candidate for the U.S. Congress, and it was a little intriguing. So I met with her in St. Petersburg, and when I walked into her office, sit down with her, there were two big chairs, and there's a big chair that I sat in, and in the chair next to me, there's a big chair next to me, and in the big chair next to me was this painting, sitting next to me, waiting for me to get there. And I looked at her and I said, where did you get this? And she said that Yeshua said you'd be more comfortable if this was here. And it was a big one. It was just this size. And I didn't know this woman never met her, didn't know her. So, when Tom Turner told me that this painting is going to lead you places, it was the truth. And we all have a spiritual path. We are all always on a spiritual path. And just what does that mean? What does it mean to be on a spiritual path? What it means is that we're being drawn home to the love of God. That's what it means. There are different names for different spiritual paths, but they all end in the same place. And they all end in the love of God. They all end in our home. None of us are happy here. You can tell yourself you are until you're blue in the face. You're not. You can find moments of joy. You can find moments of, oh, isn't that neat? You can find moments of, isn't that a nice sunset? You can find moments of finding love, finding a partner. But it's all meant to be a substitute in place of the love of God. 100% of it is a substitute for the love of God. There's one love, and it's the love of God. All of the love that we have here, what we call love, is a very, very poor imitation. It's a very, very poor attempt to find love in a dream of death, because that's what it is. And that's what Yeshua came to show us. That's what the crucifixion was about. That's what the resurrection was about. He came to show us that that it is a dream, that you are not a body. You are pure light. You are pure spirit. You are the love of God, and you belong at home. And there's something inside you, and there's something inside all of us that absolutely knows it and keeps denying it. We keep denying that. And the reason we keep denying it is because the world tells us otherwise. Mm-hmm. The world most of the time, what happens is that the world will tell us that we are a flawed human being, that most religions will start off telling us that we are sinners. Religions will start off telling us that you're born with some sort of stain or a flaw. And then we live our lives going, kind of scratching our heads and going, okay, like, but how did that get there? I just got born. I was just born. Like, seriously, how did that get there? And when you start looking at it just from the perspective of reason, maybe that's part of my attorney training, but it wasn't reasonable. There's no reason there. It didn't make sense. Would a loving God place us in an environment of pure misery? Is that possible? Could love place us in an environment of fear and misery? Is that possible? It's not. It's not possible. But what we have done essentially is to turn our backs, quite by accident, really, by believing a thought that we could be separate from God. We took a thought in that said, essentially, what would it be like if everything wasn't perfect? And then what do we got? This is what it's like if everything is not perfect. God has given us everything. God, creator, the light, love. And God's a difficult word, I think. Because I think of God as love, as my best friend, as my partner. That's what I feel like love is. And we're all one. And there's nothing that will ever change that we are all one. Not our bodies, but what is beyond the body. What the presence that's here is one. And Yeshua is absolutely standing right in our midst now. He never left. There was nowhere to go. The kingdom of heaven is here and now. There was nowhere to go. He's present right now. You can talk to him. He'll talk to you. You can pour your heart out to him. He will stand there with you. He will absolutely never, ever leave your side. It won't happen. You can trust that. Because what he went through was because of his love for all of us. And he knows every single one of us in this room. And what he's saying right now, in a very real sense, what he saw, he wasn't born knowing that he was pure spirit. He didn't come into the world knowing that. He went through all of the bumps and bruises that we have gone through. There was no way he could have done it otherwise, because he wouldn't understand. He wouldn't understand, and he wouldn't have had the compassion. And his heart, in a very real sense, wouldn't have been broken when he saw the suffering and the pain and the misery that we believed we were. And as he grew, that registered on him. And he said, essentially, there must be another way. There must be something that I'm missing. And he never let that idea go. He never, ever let it go. Just like probably most of us in here. Never, ever, and I'm just saying, never, ever let that go. Never, ever let it go. Hang on to it. Hang on to it with a fixed determination. And what the example I always use, because someone told to me, was you want to wake up to the presence of God, the presence of truth, the presence of love only, because that's all there is. Everything else has not been created by God. You want to wake up to that. You want to realize that. And you want to realize it's worse and more with more fixation than a drowning man wants to rise surface of the water. That's how fixated we should be on waking up to the truth of who we are. What comes to mind, one of the stories that comes to mind for me, I know my very favorite movie is The Last of the Mohicans. I don't know if any of you have ever seen that. I've seen it 100 times. I just love it. for a whole bunch of reasons. One of them is when I was about I was probably about 10, 11 years old. And I used to spend my summers at the New Jersey beach on Long Beach Island because we lived up north at the time. My dad would take a 2-week vacation. We'd rent a summer house there. And all my cousins that would come and my grandparents. It was just a really beautiful time. And one day it was a rainy day again. Rainy days kind of teach you a lot of stuff. It was a rainy day, and my dad, we couldn't go to the beach. My dad said, "You want to go to the bookstore?" And I said, "Sure." And we went to the bookstore, just my dad and myself. I don't know how just the two of us got away from all my brothers and sisters. But we went, and I was looking for books. I didn't know what to get. And he picked out a book off the shelf. And he handed it to me. He says, "You'll really like this book." And it was like super thick. And I looked at it, it was like The Last of the Mohicans. And I didn't know anything about The Last of the Mohicans, and it was a really thick book. I think it was like 350 pages, and I'm like 10 or 11 years old. And I'm like, how am I? And it had little tiny print. And I'm like, "Okay, Dad, all right, I'll try." So for the rest of the couple of weeks we were there, I ended up reading The Last of the Mohicans, and it somehow registered on me. And then I remember when the movie came out with Daniel Day-Lewis, I remember there's a scene in there that goes through my head constantly. Why? I don't know. And I guarantee you, everyone in here has a movie that sticks with them. There's certain scenes in a movie, and it sticks with you for a reason because it's telling you something. But this particular scene in the movie is when Daniel Day-Lewis, he fell in love with the captain's daughter, and they had gotten ambushed, and she was way on the other side of all the fighting that was going on. He was way on this side. And in between, there's all kinds of Indians and French, and he had to go through all of this fighting to get to her. And what he did was he moved through each person that attacked him very, very directly, and he eliminated everyone that tried to attack him because he was fixated on getting to his love. There was nothing that was going to get in his way. And he eventually did. He fought through a crowd of Indians and French, and he got to her and essentially swept her away. He was not going to be stopped. He saw what his love was, and he was fixated on getting there. And that's the reason that speaks to me, it's the same fixation that I have for the kingdom of heaven. And it's the same fixation that you have, believe it or not. And it's better if you start believing it, because then it becomes much easier. All the synchronicities start falling into line. All of the divine order starts becoming very, very obvious. About 3 or 4 years after the movie came out, I was on vacation in North Carolina in Chimney Rock, and I was climbing a mountain with my 2 young daughters and my family and stuff. And somebody said, "Did you know that The Last of the Mohicans was filmed on this mountain?"
Oh,
and I was standing on one of the scenes where they fell down the cliff at the end, and there's lots of fighting. I was actually standing on the mountain where it was filmed. And then all of a sudden I looked around and go, "Oh, I recognize all this." Stuff like that doesn't happen by accident. It's on our path. Once we decide that our purpose in life is to do the Holy Spirit's work, that our purpose isn't to try and make a better life here, although that may happen, but our purpose is to do the Holy Spirit's work. And that is to try and help everyone that we come in contact with to wake up to the presence of light, to wake up to the presence of God. Without having a purpose that has truth in it, and truth is simply the recognition that within yourself, there's a voice speaking to you. Every single one of us in here, there's a voice that is speaking to you. It's absolutely telling you that it's going to be okay, that you're loved, that it can tell you exactly what to do at any given point in time. I know that over the years, I've learned to trust that voice on whatever it might be, legal issues, just personal issues, family issues. And when you trust that voice, because we don't know, we as a human being, seeing what's going on in the world, we have no clue. We think we have a clue, we don't. We have no clue. We have no clue what the best decision to make in any circumstances is. I love the line in the Course in Miracles where Jesus is basically explaining that you have no clue. I'm not saying in those words, but he should. You have no clue. Let me make those decisions. Let the Holy Spirit make those decisions. And all you have to do is look back on your life, he says, and see how your decisions have worked out. Like, how's that working for you? How'd that work for you? And at the very best, you have a very up and down life. And we flip-flop back and forth between love, letting love speak to us, or letting fear speak to us. Letting a voice that wants you to be afraid. And it's nothing short of that. And the fixation, what he's saying is that the fixation, and he said he uses that word several times in the Course in Miracles, and it's not by accident. Fixation means you're fixed. You're in a spot and you're staying there. You're staying in that focus. He tells us that we're going to flip-flop back and forth a bit between fear and love, but the present moment, staying fixated, staying in the light, staying and not deviating from it. There is no deviation from the gate of heaven. There isn't a way over the gate. There's not a way to get under the gate. There's not a way you can't go run that way, and you can't run that way and get around to the back gate, because there is no back gate. You can't go over the gate. Through the gate is staying fixated on the love of God and the presence of love. I know yesterday for me was a difficult day. I had all kinds of legal stuff and decisions to make, and I thought I made a wrong decision, and I went into a fear mode of, oh my gosh, I think I made the wrong, should I have done this? I zigged, but I should have zagged. And I could feel the ego speaking to me, and I caught it relatively quickly. And what came to me very quicker than I wish it would have been quicker, but what came to me was that I was believing the illusion again. I was buying the illusion. I was biting the apple, the Adam and Eve apple. I was biting into that apple and ingesting it. And pretty soon I could feel fear going through my body and not trusting myself again. And it lasted, probably a good 30 minutes, but it was fear. It was palpable fear. And what brought me out of it was some of my favorite lessons, but one of the ones that I go back to all the time in the Course in Miracles is that my holiness, once I accept my holiness, then I can't be in fear. It's impossible. When I've accepted that I am holy, when I've accepted that I am as God created me, because we are, when we accept that as a fact, not as well, that would really be nice, or that sounds cool, like, oh, maybe someday. But when we take it as a fact, when we accept our holiness, then there's nothing that our holiness cannot fix and solve. And as soon as within minutes of that, I could feel there was complete peace. It was like, oh, I forgot my holiness. I forgot it. And holiness doesn't mean that you're a saint. It simply means your holiness is perfect peace. Your holiness is your oneness with God, with oneness with the Creator, that all that is, and that we've been given everything. We've absolutely been given everything. It's that oneness feeling is, and the rest of the day, yesterday, and all the way until I came here today, it's like I'm walking on air. It literally feels like I'm walking on air. The presence is palpable. And so those lessons about recognizing and accepting your holiness, and realizing that if I accept that, if I take that as a fact, then there can be no fear. Because we go back and forth between fear and love, fear and peace, fear and love. And we want to be at peace. That holiness is vitally important. It's who we are, it's what we are. And that's what the Course in Miracles is about, is remembering who we are. It's, it's the Wizard of Oz story. It's remembering that we're dreaming. And I can tell you the story about the Wizard of Oz. When the Munchkin walked past my house 15 years ago, literally, I was outside in my garden, and I was upset about something, or I was like, what's going on? I didn't understand. I wasn't at peace. I just wasn't at peace. And a man walked by, a little short man, and I saw him. He would walk past, and then I would see him the next few days. He would walk past my house. And this was a time where, Spirit was telling me that life is like the Wizard of Oz. It really is like the movie. It's a dream. You're going to wake up from it. And so then all of a sudden, this little man starts walking past my house. And we had just moved into this neighborhood. And I didn't really think much of it. And until a few days, or actually probably a couple of weeks after that, I read a story in the newspaper that this man was an actual Munchkin from the Wizard of Oz movie. And he lived down the street from me, and I went out and I could see his house.
That's so cool.
Stuff like that. When we decide that we want the Holy Spirit's purpose, and that is to wake us up, then we will get all of those synchronicities, all of those confirmations that we're on the right path. It will absolutely. All you have to do is say, show me it's a dream. Show me. I don't believe you. You can say, I don't believe you, show me. And before long, so many things will happen that you just like, okay, I get it, I understand. And then it can become really, really fun. Really, at least a lot more peaceful. And there's the fear level, which is what we deal with, which is why people are on antidepressants, and why people are doing, overdosing on drugs, and why people are drinking to excess, is because we have a level of anxiety. And all that means is we have such a huge level of fear about what's going to happen tomorrow. That's what I woke up. That's what I woke up this morning with. What Yeshua wanted me to mention is, we wake up and we have at some point in our day, every day, if not 1,000 times a day, the question comes up, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen tomorrow? What's she going to say? What's going to happen with my finances? Am I going to have enough money to pay the rent? The question is always, what's going to happen? I don't know about you. I don't like the feeling of what's going to happen. Who wants to live in that anxiety? Who wants to live in that unknown? We've gotten really good at dealing with it. We have. We've gotten really good at talking ourselves into that this is just what life is, what's going to happen. Somebody going to get sick? Is somebody going to die? I had a client call me today, and she's a Social Security disability client from New York. She and her husband, they worked for the city of New York for a long time. They both came down with various illnesses. And I talked to her on the phone today, right after this question came up, what's going to happen to me? And it was Jesus talking to me. What's going to happen? And then I realized that's what was running through my mind. What's going to happen? And she told me on the phone, she said she had a panic attack while she was shopping. She had to be taken to the hospital, hospitalized overnight. And she's a really, really calm, nice woman. She's not like, a lunatic or anything where she's just like off the wall. Much, then kind of people get freaked out a little bit. So I just encouraged her that we all live that life to one degree or another. I think some of us think that that's only in circumstances that people are on the fringes, and that's not the case. It's only the people that are on the fringes that we see on the streets. I always think, I see this woman in Tampa. Her name is Mary, and she goes up and down the street that for years. She's probably 60 years old now. And she pushes a big cart, grocery cart, and she's got all her stuff in it. It's like up to the ceiling. It's covered with a big blue canvas. And she lives on the street, but she pushes this thing. And she's bent over pushing it. I don't know how she survives. But people look at her and go, oh my gosh, that poor woman. But you know what? We're doing the same thing. We're doing the exact same thing. We might have money to not be on the street, enough money to pay rent this month, But we're all pushing that load around. She's in my life. I see her so much because she reminds me we're pushing the same load around. We're gathering all this stuff. You know, it could be, you could live in a big house, you could have nice cars, you can have all this stuff going on in your life. What you're doing is you're pushing it around. No different than what Mary's doing with all the junk in her basket on the street. There's not a difference. And what we want to do is let that burden go. We don't want to push that stuff around. We want to wake up to the presence of love. We want to drop it. We want to let it go. And those are all mainly we have to watch our mind. We have to watch our thoughts. What is it that we're thinking? What thoughts are we entertaining? Are we entertaining thoughts of peace? Like today's lessons in the Course in Miracles is my mind holds only what I think with God. And when you allow that to sink in, it's like, wow, you can feel that. Wow, you can feel that. You can feel your holiness. You can feel the presence of love. That's what we want to feel. Imagine this. Your body drops away today. What's there? It's going to be like, oh my God, I thought that was real. I got so angry over such and such. It fooled me. It fooled me. And that ring goes through my mind. I don't want that. I don't want to be fooled. I don't want to get to the end of this. And my body drops away when I'm done doing what I'm doing and going, oh my God, I could have had a V8. I could have been at peace the whole time. Yeah. I could have gone through everything that I've gone through in peace. If we just realize that it's not what we're dealing with is meant to bring us out of peace. And it has no power. The world has no power. Fear has no power because we are love. We are holiness. And we want to wake up to it while we're alive, while we're dealing with the body. We want to wake up to it because we don't want to wake up to it after we pass over because we won't get it. The light will be too bright. The light will be too much for us to pull in. Because it's not like your body drops away, and I was shown this spiritually. I'm not guessing at this. When the body drops away and you are in pure light, 9 times out of 10, it causes a panic because you don't know what the light is. You don't recognize it. We are not comfortable being at peace. Being at peace is how many of us, I know plenty of people, how many of us can sit still and meditate for an hour? How many of us can just sit and not read a book and watch TV or have a conversation ad nauseum about nothing? How many of us can actually do that? How many of us can be at peace being at peace? And we're not, for the most part. Can you be at peace being at peace? Good question. Can you be at peace being at peace? When our body drops away, it's nothing but peace. And that's a foreign feeling to most people. We're used to the chaos. We're used to doing stuff and fixing stuff and trying to make things work. Can we be at peace in our holiness? Can we identify with that now? And we can. And that's what the Course in Miracles is about. That's where Jesus is leading us to, is to recognize our holiness. When my father passed away about 2 years ago, shortly, about 4 years before he passed away, he was 82. When he passed away, and he was, I would consider him, one of my mentors. He led a life that I wanted to imitate. 8 children, married to the same woman his whole life. As patient can get with 8 kids. Just a really, really good man, very loving man. And when about 4 years before he passed away, he had retired, and he was walking on Bayshore Boulevard in Tampa. And he would go out for a morning walk, and he was in very good health, and he got hit by a bicycle and fell on his head and had some damage to his brain. It was just very slight. We went to the hospital, spent a night or two in the hospital, came home, he seemed fine. But slowly over the next few years, it began taking its toll on him, and he had essentially brain damage. It started imitating kind of dementia or Alzheimer's. Not really dementia, but more like Alzheimer's, where he couldn't get words out. He was perfectly healthy physically, he smiled, that sort of thing. He wasn't bedridden, but he couldn't understand. He would look at you and smile, but he couldn't get the words out. And he would only remember certain things. And it got to that point where he became very dependent. He was always a very independent, strong person. And I really disliked seeing that. And so I was inspired, told by Jesus to sit with him and to hold the thoughts. And during that time, I was very fixated again on my holiness is my salvation, those lessons about your holiness. Accepting your holy, accepting who you are. It's all about accepting it. It's all about, yes, this is who I am, no matter what. Yes, this is who I am. I've accepted my holiness, and my holiness is our salvation. And I would sit with him, and he would sit in his chair watching TV, and he was perfectly, he didn't look sick or anything like that. He would just look at me and smile. And I would just sit there silently, Dad, our holiness is our salvation. Because there's only one of us here. There's only one here. God didn't create individual bodies. We're pretending that that's the case, but it's not the case. And so I sat with him just holding that thought. My holiness, and actually, the lesson is my holiness is our salvation, but Jesus changed it to, he said, say, our holiness is our salvation. And as I sat there doing that, nothing really happened. I wasn't even sure why I was doing it. And then probably the third time I did it, second or third time I did it, he had closed his eyes, and I was holding that thought that our holiness is our salvation. And he opened his eyes, and he looked at me and smiled. And there was a smile of recognition. He looked at me and smiled, and he grabbed his thigh and he says, my dad's name was Peter. He said, I'm not Peter. This isn't me. I'm not Peter. And he smiled. He said, I'm not Peter. And then he just closed his eyes. A couple of days later, he passed away. But the gift for me was that he recognized his holiness, that it's possible to recognize your holiness. It's absolutely possible. Jesus doesn't teach these things in the Course in Miracles for nothing. And I trusted that. The gift for me was that I then had a deeper trust even in the Course in Miracles and what Yeshua was saying. That it's not just taught, it is absolutely the truth. That if I can sit with my Father and just sit with him in that presence of holiness, really understanding it, really knowing it, and it can affect him, it can cause someone to wake up. Wow, what a miracle. And that was a turning point for me. That was about 2.5 years ago. That was a huge turning point for me. Because it's like you walk away and you go, whoa, that really works. It's like, yay, that works. Everything was in divine timing. Our lives are in divine order. My father, you can look at it and say he shouldn't have got hit by a bicycle. No, that was part of his path. If that didn't happen to him, I wouldn't have the understanding that I have. I wouldn't be telling you this story. Everything happens in divine timing. It's all in divine order. There's nothing that's out of order. Even the most difficult things, it's like ask, what's this for? What am I to do? What am I to understand with this? Everything is divine. He played his part to help me get home. He didn't have to. And I wouldn't be telling you about this today. I wouldn't be, had I not seen Yeshua, I didn't set it up to go to Fort Lauderdale and decide that here's what's going to happen. That all of these things happened in the synchronicity that they happened in. They happened because that's just simply what my path is. And it's all of our paths. It's every single one of our paths. And I'm telling you these stories not so that you learn about me, because until all of us are awake, then the kingdom of heaven is not all back together. We all have to wake up. And so we all need to choose the light, choose the Holy Spirit. I would highly, highly, highly recommend the Course in Miracles. I can't tell you how valuable it's an absolute roadmap to home. Shortly after my father died, about a year later, I was talking to a friend of mine that I had met in Michigan as a result of this painting when I went there to speak, and we became lifelong friends. In fact, I talked to her just the other day. She was is a retired psychologist, and very, very spiritually gifted. And another part of this is that I've been gifted with teachers that have taught me everything I need to know along the way. Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer. If you ask for it, the teacher will come. Absolutely. If you ask, the teaching will come. And so I met this woman, and we became friends. And I was talking to her on the phone about a year after my dad died, and she said, "Is your father in spirit?" And I said, "Yeah." And I realized I hadn't told her that he had passed away. And she said, "He wants to talk to you. He wants to tell you something." He told me lots of things, a couple of things, but what was most important and relevant to today is that he said, "Paul, as soon as I was in the presence of Jesus, as soon as I was in his presence, everything that I thought that I had done wrong, not good enough, wish I had done differently, was disappointed about, every feeling of that nature," he said, "disappeared, gone, as if it never happened." He said that was his message for me, is that all of those feelings, all those guilt feelings that we have, those little guilt feelings, even just the teeny tiny ones. I'm talking about like, I shouldn't have, murdered that guy when I was, in college. We're talking about just those little tiny guilt things that get to us. I shouldn't have said that. Oh my gosh, I forgot to do this. I didn't say the right thing to her, or those sort of guilt feelings that I wish I would have done something differently, all disappeared. His message to me was all of it disappeared in his presence. And his presence is here right now. His presence is clearly in the Course in Miracles. His presence is clearly within all of us. And it's simply up to us to accept that. That if we accept the presence of the Holy Spirit, if you don't feel comfortable with Jesus, whatever it is that you can connect with as source, as your connection to God, because that's what we are, all one. When you become comfortable with that and you connect to that, you can't be in fear. It's impossible. And his message to me that essentially was, it's all a dream. He said, one of the comments was, it was an interesting experience. It was an experience of fear. That's all it is. And we want to wake up from that. And we can do that. We can do that simply by being aware of the presence of God. And the best way to do that, I have found the best way to do that is to thank God. Be grateful to God. Not in the sense like when I was a kid, I was taught, you thank God and be thankful for the things you have and so forth. And I think we all go through that period of like vision boards and being thankful and pretending you have it, whatever it is, and then it's going to magically appear somehow. That's not the thanks that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the thanks, and Yeshua talks about in the Course in Miracles. That's the communion with God. That's the highest prayer that there is. It's simply closing your eyes and feeling thankful. It's like it's being with your best friend. And I've given this example before. For me, the feeling of thank you is just this really joyful feeling. It's like you sit with your best friend and you have a cup of coffee or whatever it is, and you do something with your wife, or you do something with your spouse or your friend or something, and you're thankful that that person's in your life. And you have this wonderful time. It's like and you feel this thank you for being my friend. If you could make that feeling never ever go away, that thankfulness, that's heaven.
Yeah.
That's heaven. That's happiness. That's joy. There's nothing else exists but that communication with that person, that thankfulness. I have 4 kids, 4 children, and I can sit with each one of them, and whatever experience I have with them, my oldest is 30, my youngest is 15, and each one of them is different, and I can spend time with them. Like, I'm thankful. Like, wow, what a great person, a human being, what a great kid. If I could bottle that and just keep it and never end, that I'm so thankful for that. But that's our relationship with God.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending thanks. It's a never-ending thank you. Thank you. It's like, can you imagine like someone giving us the biggest gift, the most wonderful gift, like, and it's like something you always wanted and you never expected, and it's like, wow, thank you, and you're so happy. And that's the feeling of God. God has given us everything. Literally has given us everything. Peace. Everything is peace and love. That's everything. There is nothing else. God has given us everything. Peace and love and joy and happiness. God's will for us, and it's in the Course of Miracles in about 5 or 6 lessons at least, God's will for us is perfect happiness. And I've said, if you say that to yourself daily, like when you catch yourself with a negative thought, like a fear thought or something, I mean, you catch yourself, oh wait, God's will for me is perfect happiness. And there's a feeling that comes over of perfect joy. Not because of what's happening. Don't be fooled into believing that it has to be with and because of something that's happening in the world, or that feeling of happiness is necessarily going to change that situation. It's simply a feeling of joy that God, that peace, that love created you, created us. And it's like, can you imagine, because this did happen, can you imagine when we were created, none of us remembers it, and just kind of like in a sense, popping out of the womb and you've got everything, it's like, whoa, thank you. Thank you. And that never stops. And that never, can you imagine that never, ever stopping? Never, ever stop. And that's the thankfulness that we have with God. And God is thankful to us because without it, there's a constant communication back and forth of thankfulness. It's when you sit in thankfulness, thank you for going before me, walking before me in my day. Thank you for solving all my problems before I get to them today. If you really believe that, and that's my days typically start off that way. I have to remember, I have to tell myself when I start thinking, okay, what do I got to do? Thank you for taking everything today. Thank you for taking care of my whole day. Thank you. And when you don't ever say thank you, unless you believe something or someone is with you, or else you're talking to yourself. So as you say thank you, and I'm talking to myself as I'm walking into a courtroom, I'm not talking to myself. I'm actually talking to the light, talking to God, talking to perfection, talking to peace. Thank you for taking care of this. And as you do that, miracles happen. Absolute miracles happen. I can just tell you it happens time and time and time again. And then the miracle is peace.
Yeah.
The miracle is peace. It's not necessarily that I get my way, what my ego mind might think that I should happen, but it's what happens is peace. That's what happens is peace, because that's what God has given us. And there's a lesson in the Course that I always go back to, and it's a paragraph in I think it's maybe 195, but it's a paragraph where Jesus is talking about how we basically are complaining about the misery and the feeling that we're always pursued in this world, and it's like we're constantly badgered, and we want the Holy Spirit to do something about it, and like we're complaining. Essentially, in very, very basic terms, we're complaining about what's going on. This shouldn't be happening. That shouldn't be happening. And he says, God has given you everything. What are you complaining about? You want God to fix an illusion. You have everything. You absolutely have everything. It's like literally like looking at the wall and staring at the wall and complaining to the wall that you don't have a house to live in, and you turn around and there's the whole living room. There's the whole house behind you. And that always sticks with me, is to be thankful. Watch what happens when you're thankful. Just thankful for the presence of God, just thankful for love. Thank you for this day. Thank you for guiding me throughout the day. Thank you. Thank you. It gives you a real sense of peace, a real sense of confidence, a real sense that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to manage anything. Just do what you're just guided. And so that sense of peace, that standing in the light of thankfulness, gratefulness, because here we're a bunch of complainers. I mean, we really, really are. We're complaining, and kind of rightfully so. I mean, when we look at this world, we complain about the world. It shouldn't be this way. He shouldn't have said this. He shouldn't have done that. That guy shouldn't have cut me off in traffic. Now, you name it. You go through your day, and there's lots. We complain. And you know what? It's designed. The world, the illusion is designed to make us complain, so that we'll get lost in the complaints and the problems. And we work on fixing the complaint. We hammer a nail in here. The board's hammered down now. We turn around. Another board has popped up behind us. We nail that one back in. Oh, we took care of that problem. Oh, something else just came up. I mean, how many of you have gone through that day? Yesterday, that was my day. There's one thing that's solved, and something else is coming up, and then my other child comes to me with this, and the book, she didn't return the book on time, and there's an overdue book on it, and that stuff. And what I'm led to always, when I find myself like my heat going up a bit, this is a lesson in peace. I choose peace. And every single one of all those little tiny things worked out peacefully. It's a matter of just continually choosing peace, because that will get us home. That will put us in the presence of heaven. That is what heaven is. Eternal happiness, eternal peace. Always, 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 and then always, and then after that, always, always. And after that, forever and ever. And after that, never, ever, ever stopping, and never, ever, ever ending. Can you imagine that feeling of peace and happiness and thankfulness never, ever, ever going away? I remember when I was a kid, I laid in bed. I was 8, 9, 6 years old, and I could feel eternity. I don't know if you guys have ever had that experience, but I had this feeling of eternity, and that this never-endingness, and trying to fathom that, trying to wrap my mind around. You mean I never end? There's no end to me? Can you imagine just being happy forever and ever? Most of us can't. Take the happiest moment you've had in the last 2 days, the last week, the last month, whatever it is, that last vacation that you took, and just multiply that. That never stops. That will never, ever, ever, ever stop. That's what the world is beyond what we see. We're just so used to being here where we have a little bit of happiness, and yay, that's fun, that's great. And then, then you go back to, kind of pounding the rock is what I call it. Go back to pounding the rock. And then you get a little bit more happiness, and then take the sledgehammer again, you pound the rock. And that's what life becomes. That's what we've accepted as our lives. And to wrap this up, the point of it is, is to recognize and accept who you are. To really accept it, to ask to remember who you are, to ask for that amnesia to be lifted, and also recognize that if our purpose here is to wake up, which is what the Holy Spirit's purpose is to help us do, if that's our purpose, then you're going to be shown. You're absolutely going to be shown evidence of that. As a lawyer, I needed to be shown evidence. Don't tell me this story, show me evidence. Convince me with evidence that this is a dream. And that's what's happened. I've absolutely been convinced beyond a doubt that it is a dream. That doesn't mean that it's easy all the time by any stretch of the imagination. Things come up, and it's like a jack in a box. The story, I think, in the course about, you're walking along and you're a kid and you're playing with your toys, and then jack in a box jumps out of the, and we're going to still have those moments, absolutely, for sure. It's going to, but your mind shifts back to the Course in Miracles. I choose peace. I choose the love of God. I choose to embody this. I remember what the truth is. That's my choice. Everything is in divine order literally is in divine order. And I remember Deepak Chopra telling me this, not telling me, but I went to a seminar here in Tampa years ago, and he told a story about some synchronicity in his life where he was on a street corner in Los Angeles. His daughter was in London. His agent was like in Seattle and somewhere, and he was looking for where he was supposed to be. And they just basically said, well, look up. And he was in the parking lot where he was supposed to be. Those sorts of stories. I was in New Orleans years ago, and my friend Gary called me and said, what are you doing this weekend? I said, well, Michelle and I are in New Orleans. He said, oh, really? He says, I'm in New Orleans. I said, where are you staying? I think it was the Sheraton. He says, oh, I'm staying at the Sheraton too. He said, and he says, look up, and he was like 5 floors above in the atrium. Those, when you're on the path, you will be guided. You'll be taken care of. You absolutely will. And the point of it is, we want to return to the kingdom of heaven. We want to return to the kingdom of peace. Everything is in divine order. If we choose to wake up to that. If we choose not to, we can do it the hard way. One final story. When I met my wife, we've been married 20 years now. And long story short, met her on somebody I had gone to. My daughter was a brownie, and she had a camp out, and it was all moms with their kids, and I got elected to go with all the moms and to the camp out in Waimama somewhere. And I couldn't sleep with the girls because it was all girls, and I was the only man there, so I had to sleep in my car in the woods. So I slept in the car in the woods. It was fine. It was quiet. It's okay. And then next morning, I met another mom, and she said, "You want to come to breakfast with us?" And I said, "Sure." We did. And she said, "No, I know somebody that would be perfect for you." I was divorced at the time.
Oh gosh.
And so she said, "Yeah." She said, "Her name is Michelle." I said, "Okay, well, I'm not really, I don't know, whatever." I wasn't really interested. And so probably a couple months later, I called, she gave me her number, and I called Michelle. And we ended up talking on the phone for about a month before we ever met. She says, "Well, I don't really want to meet you because it might be disappointed." Well, no, I might be too. And I said, "You know what, we just can't talk on the phone for a month." I really liked her. I had no idea what she looked like. So we ended up meeting, and the rest, we fell in love.
Aww.
It ended up where when she's 11 years younger than me. When she was little, I lived in Tampa, an area called Pat Acres. And we had like about an acre and a half of land. Behind us, there's a wooden fence. On the other side of that wooden fence was an apartment complex. On the other side of that wooden apartment complex, behind that wooden fence, in that apartment complex is where Michelle lived, in my backyard. She was little, like at the time when I lived there, I was probably 14 or something. I used to climb over that fence. Me and my brothers used to climb over that fence and swim in their big apartment pool. We had a little pool, but they had a big fun pool, and we used to go there. And Michelle told me, she said she used to sit out there with her little friends. She was younger at the time. She was probably 6 years old. And she would look at the boys in the pool, and she would say, "He's going to be my husband." She didn't know who I was. She said, "These boys used to come over and swim in the pool. And we would sit there and imagine that he's going to be my husband." So, 25 years later or so, we ended up being.
That's crazy.
Again, the point of it is that we're never alone. There is a plan for us. There is divine timing. There is divine order. Everything is, remind yourself when you get up in the morning, everything is in divine order. When you find yourself, because I do this all the time, like, I get up in the morning and my daughter has to be at school later or earlier, and so my plan got messed up because I take my youngest daughter to school in the morning. And then all through the day, stuff comes up all the time. Just remind yourself that these jack-in-the-boxes that are popping out are there to throw you off your game, to make you believe that it's not divine order, that there isn't the presence of God, that there isn't the presence of perfection. I can look back at my life, now at 59 years old, and say, and see the perfection. When I was going through it, did I see the perfection? No, I didn't. I fought it pretty much every step of the way. Because I was in charge. I was the boss. It was my life. I was going to say how I was going to go. But, the Holy Spirit has different plans for us. And if we're lucky, something sort of bad happens, and it wakes us up, and it sets us on this path. So I know that where the ending is. I know the ending is essentially where we wake up to the presence of God, and that there's nothing else that we think of all day. There's nothing else that has our attention. Even while we're doing our mundane jobs, our mundane parenting, whatever it is that we're doing with more love. What happens is that those tasks that we're doing don't stop. We just do it with more love. We do it with more confidence. We do it with more assurance. We do it with the help of the Holy Spirit, and everything else becomes more loving and easier and more peaceful. And those were, I think the last words recorded in the Bible, at the Last Supper when Jesus said, love one another and love God. Love one another and love God. Mm-hmm. And because we're all one. And when it's kind of like, if we don't love one another, not for the bodies that we are, not for the personalities that we are, because that's really hard to do. That's hard to love. Don't try and love a personality. That's impossible. You hit a roadblock. Love. Don't try and, you can't love an ego or a personality, because there's going to be things about that personality that are not lovable, that are going to rub us the wrong way. But until we look past that and we just love, when we realize we're loving ourselves, we're loving God, all I see is your holiness. That's all I feel. When I'm looking at you, all I feel and see is holiness. And so when we try, like, to love a spouse or love a child or love a stranger, we're not being asked to love their personality, to put up with abuse, to put up with very difficult things. That's not the love that I'm talking about. I'm talking about this very impersonal love, where we just recognize the love of God everywhere in everything. But don't try and love personalities, because there'll be something about the personality that will rub us the wrong way, and then we'll think that there's not love there. Look beyond it. And once you start looking beyond it, when you see only holiness, when you see your own holiness, then everybody else sees their own holiness. And then those personality traits start to disappear. Those conflicts start to disappear. But they don't disappear unless you decide. It's that nobody can do it for you. Unless you decide to accept your holiness, your own connection to the presence of love. I am here because I am you, is what God says. I am here. Can God be anywhere but here right now with us? I am here because I am you. Where you see me, you see the Father. And when you look in the mirror, what you see in the mirror is where you see God. Past the body. We want this to become a reality. We want what we see not to be given value anymore, not to be given heat anymore. We couldn't have a better example to wake us up than the current president that we have. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about what Republican or Democrat or politics. We couldn't have a more prime example of an ego. Mm-hmm. And when we look at it, we can choose to judge it and get all fired up about it, because that's what it wants us to do. It wants us to go protest and go scream and yell and say it's not fair and oh my God, I can't believe he's still, oh my God. Now play right into it. Couldn't be a better lesson for us to keep choosing peace. I choose peace. I mean, you can say under your breath, he's an idiot, but I choose peace. I choose peace. I choose peace. I remember the first time that lesson really rung true to me, and I chose peace. And I kept choosing peace. And I kept choosing peace. And one final story. I'm sorry to keep you. One final story. About a year and a half ago now, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. And it was a surprise, obviously a surprise to both of us. She called me on the phone. She was coming back from the doctor. That was supposed to be a routine visit. And she said, no, the test came back positive. I have cancer, endometrial cancer. And very, very long story short, she ended up going to Moffitt. We went out to Moffitt, and the surgeon there was a really nice man, very gifted surgeon. And fortunately, her cancer was stage 1, very kind of lowest form. But during this whole process, they had to do a radical hysterectomy. But during this whole process, I was trying to figure out how I could fix it. I was trying to figure out, because I knew the Course in Miracles inside and out, and I figured I had to cure it. I had to fix it. And what kept coming to me was simply to let it go. I mean, I kept the thoughts that God didn't create this, and so cancer doesn't exist. God didn't create cancer, doesn't exist. I kept that in mind. I kept in mind that I am as God created me, that this could not have existence. But still, it was very difficult because it was very personal. Mm-hmm. And so my mind started running wild with the fear thoughts of, okay, what if she, with the worst fear thoughts. And I asked Yeshua, I said, what is it that you held in mind in a very, very way worse circumstance than what I'm dealing with during the crucifixion, leading up to it? What did you hold in mind? I want to know, because I was trying to put all the pieces of the Course in Miracles together and holding different thoughts. But I couldn't say I was really at peace. I couldn't say I was completely, I would go in and out of peace, and I kept choosing peace, but I would go in and out. And he woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and in very distinct, loud words, he said, his answer was, I know peace. And I could feel it speaking from inside me. And just the room was just still. There was just a sacred stillness when he said that. He said, I feel as well as him. And I waited for him to say something else, because I was running all kinds of thoughts through my mind, like there must be more to this. And he just repeated again. He just said, I know peace. And then there was just sacred silence. And in that sacred silence, that's really what spoke to me, because it was like the light went on, I got it. Because there's nothing else to say. His answer was, I know peace. And he knows nothing else. There's nothing else to know of. And when we clog our mind with all kinds of thoughts that this world wants us to think, I keep taking myself back to that. And when I'm entertaining those thoughts, I know, and I can hear that voice, I know peace. When he was standing during the crucifixion process and the trial and so forth, he just had the thought of, I know peace. That's it. I know peace. There's nothing else to know. And my wife's surgery went really well. They couldn't find any cancer. He said, I never expect to see you again. It wasn't anywhere else. It was gone. He said, in fact, I didn't even find it in what I removed. So I don't know where it is, where it was. But what gave me the peace, what calmed me down, was his words that I know peace. And I didn't have to know anything else. And I trusted, well, it's good enough for Jesus, good enough for me. So when those things come up, it's almost like you say to yourself, I don't know about this fear. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know about this worry. I just know peace. And it kind of feels like you're burying your head in the sand a bit at first, but then when you see the miracles happen, because you get out of the way. And knowing peace is knowing God. And you let God write his name on your world. So just know peace. No peace beyond and to the exclusion of anything else. I know peace. I choose peace. I want the peace of God more than any. I want the peace of God. And I remember wanting her cancer cured. But wanting her cancer cured was not a peaceful thought.
Mm-hmm.
I want it cured. That I didn't feel peaceful. Just choose peace. And take the love of Jesus with you tonight, because it's always going to always be there.
Thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome. Does anybody have any questions?
What is that picture?
This particular one?
Yeah. I mean, the picture.
The painter painted it. I think she painted it maybe in the late 80s.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Betty Myers. She died in like late 1997 or something like that. But there's a website. If you care to go to it, there's a website called thetruefaceofjesus.com. And this painting is on there. And on the website, there's various people's stories about their experiences with this painting. And I didn't know where the painting come from when I got it, because the painting I got didn't have you couldn't see the artist's name. The painting I had was cut off right about here. Couldn't see her name. And I didn't know, again, this is divine order. I didn't know who painted it. I looked for years, couldn't find it. 2.5, 3 years ago, when I came here, I was led to come here and start co-teaching Course in Miracles with Sharon. I showed it to Sharon, and within a couple of days or something, she connected with one of her vendors that brings stuff and said, "Oh, I know where the artist is." And Sharon found the website after like 15 years or so of my searching for it. Found just like that. And on the website, there's this story of Joanne Mako, who sent it to Fort Lauderdale. Her story, because there's stories of people's experiences with this. And her story is like one of the first on there, and it tells her story, how it came into her possession, which is really interesting as well. But and after like 20 years or so, Joanne and I made that connection again. Everything came full circle. Like, oh, I see. And everything started connecting again. So I hadn't met Sharon. All that stuff wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't know about that. So there again, we're absolutely in divine order. We're absolutely. It's very much. I keep saying like we are very much sitting in heaven right now. We are sitting in the light, and we're pretending that we don't realize it. Really, we really are. That's what divine order is. We're pretending that we're like the other day. Yeshua said to me, I can't remember what I was trying to figure out. He says, "Would you stop pretending that you don't know who you are? Would you stop pretending to be a human being?" Because I was trying to figure out something, something. And when he said that, I saw what I was doing. I was buying into the story again. Buying into it. So, anyway, keep choosing peace.
I just want to say something. The painting that Paul brought us at the very, very beginning is the one that's behind the counter over there. And we leave it in a place of honor behind the counter. But when he first left it here, we had it on the slot wall, and purposely right above where Paul sits in Course in Miracles on Wednesday nights. He always sits in the same chair, which is right about there. And I don't know if we just decided to see, Pat and I just decided to see how many people noticed that the painting was just above his head. And I remember Judy, when there were certain people that when Paul first started coming to the group, they'd go, and they kind of look around like, and some people would say something and some wouldn't. But the painting, after it got the wings, has had amazing stories and experiences and blessings for other people too. That is another whole class of things that have happened around it being here and how it's affected people's lives. So it's got great energy.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's a very living presence. It's-
That's all I'm gonna say about that. So, anybody else have any questions? Are we still on?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording now, though.
Thanks,
Thank you
Sandy.
for coming. Thank you for coming, because I get to speak here, and it's something I look forward to.